All right, good morning. Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. I told you guys this morning that we're talking about vaccines and all of that good stuff. And it's Friday, so we're going to try and make it as fun as it possibly can be because we want to get you the information that you need this morning. And to help us discuss a way out of the pandemic for the Caribbean region, I want to welcome Dr. Swinburne Augustine. He's a microbiologist and an immunologist. Good morning, Dr. Augustine. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you doing? Doing good, thank you.
So far, so good. You know, we here this morning trying to figure out, how we can get people to understand the importance of taking vaccines. Carrie, you're with us inside this interview, right?
Oh, yes, I definitely am. And I have so many questions for Dr. Augustine.
Well, you can go ahead and start.
Before we jump into the vaccine itself, Doctor, I wanted to know what differentiates the COVID-19 virus from other coronavirus, within the other viruses in the coronavirus family, such as the common cold, and why is the COVID-19 so deadly as compared to the others?
So many of the viruses in the coronavirus family, a lot of them don't evolve to be spread by air, right? To be airborne. What differentiates COVID-19 is that it made that jump to humans, and then it was able to spread before you were symptomatic. So imagine walking around with a deadly disease and you don't even know, and you can spread it for up to 10 to 14 days, and that's why we had the quarantines.
Right.
Also, it was airborne, which makes it more deadly and more contagious, if I would say. But then COVID started to binding to one of the receptors on our cells, the ACE angiotensin converting enzyme 2, the ACE2 receptor on our cells that makes it like a false key that it can go in and manipulate our cells. So it causes a lot of problems, including death. We've seen the damage it has done all over the globe. So that's what I think differentiates it.
Doctor, I just wanted to get some clarity on that. You said it goes into your body. So the virus goes into your body. And I know that it tricks your immune system into triggering. So it's almost like it makes, from what I understand at least, is that it makes your body turn on itself. Is that what it does? Or does the virus actually do something when it attaches itself to your ACE receptors?
Well, when it attaches to the receptors, it goes into the cell, releases its RNA strand, and then our body picks it up and makes the proteins makes the proteins for the different parts of the virus, then it packages itself. So millions of those are happening at one time inside the cell, bursts out, and goes and infect other cells. Now it triggers something called the cytokine storm. The cytokines are proteins, small proteins that regulate the immune system. And imagine if you can't have the immune system being regulated the way it should, then you have all the damage that the virus is doing.
And speaking of the damage, Doctor, what advancements have been made in treatment of COVID positive people in the hospitals?
There are a number of treatments that they are testing, but remdesivir, one of the drugs that they're using, remdesivir has been shown to work very, very well with patients who are in the hospital with COVID already. The other thing that they will do is to give them serum from a previously infected person. Those will have antibodies in there that will help to bring down the viral load, right? Until the person can make their own antibodies.
Wonderful. Now, vaccines have aided mankind in the eradication of some diseases and the control of other diseases. Is this the outlook for the COVID-19 vaccines in getting past this pandemic?
Could you repeat that question again, please?
I was saying that vaccines have been used in the past to eradicate some diseases and to control other diseases. Do you believe that the COVID-19 vaccine has the potential to get us past this pandemic?
Not only that the COVID-19 vaccines have the potential to, they're really the only way we get out of this. The vaccines are meant to do something that the virus causes, right? It makes us make one part, an essential part of the virus, the spike protein. That spike you see on top of the virus, those spikes, those are the spikes that are needed for it to bind to our receptors on our cells. So those vaccines are meant to make the spike proteins without getting you infected. And that way, whenever you see COVID, you will already have antibodies. And the immune system is like our military, right? It's our Air Force, it's our Navy, it's everything else. And they're waiting in case COVID shows up. Without the vaccine, that's why we're having so many problems all around the world.
But
without the vaccines, we are susceptible.
Right. And we've been taking measures, like you said initially, in the quarantine stages. And then, we've been encouraging people to sanitize, to wash your hands. Does that process, doing it so often, does it mean a weaker immune system in years to come? Because, they say that there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. So we are accustomed getting a certain amount of bad bacteria that is good for, good bacteria, sorry, that is good for us. But with all the sanitizing and cleaning and stuff, would that bring forward, a weaker immune system in the future?
That's a very good question. And one of the things that we're working on, it depends on what you washing your hands with. If you're using antimicrobial soaps, we're already having problems with a lot of the bugs becoming antibiotic resistant. That becomes a problem with bacteria. With viruses, they can exchange genes that make them more virulent, make them more deadly. And we're already starting to see some of those. But you're right, we need to be careful with the all these antibiotic soaps and all these things, because it ends up right in the environment and leads to a lot of antibiotic resistance.
Doctor, what type of vaccines are there? As in, I understand there are vaccines that use a deactivated form of the virus. There are different vaccines that, even in more modern times, utilize mRNA base. What types of vaccines are there, and what are the benefits to each?
There are about 3 or 4 types of vaccines. One is the one you hear the most, Pfizer and Moderna. They are mRNA vaccines. So what that is, and it's not new technology. We've been working with DNA, RNA for a very, very long time. If you look at any of those forensic science shows, you will see a lot of that in there.
Right.
Now, the mRNA vaccines are just, the mRNA is the messenger RNA, which is the message. You have your DNA, which is your template. Then the mRNA is the message. It's a string of letters. That particular string of letters codes only for the spike protein, right, of the virus. That is essential for the virus to infect our cells. So if you have antibodies against it, then it cannot bind. Therefore, it cannot enter and infect our cells. There's nothing for us to give, and there's nothing for us to get.
Okay.
Those are the mRNA vaccines. Then you have what you mentioned, the AstraZeneca, for example, is one of those. They put the DNA inside an inactivated adenovirus 26 virus. The DNA then, once it picks it up, you get vaccinated. The cell picks it up. The DNA turns into the mRNA, and the mRNA into the spike protein, same thing. The other ones are heat-killed proteins. Well, they would take the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself, inactivate it either chemically or heat inactivate it. That way, proteins bind in a certain conformation. So if you heat it up or chemically inactivate it, the proteins will change their conformation so it can't bind. So by heat killing those, when you inject them, the body makes a bunch of proteins against all the different parts. When you see the virus itself, so we've just went through 3 other major types.
Right.
I have a question on one of them, Doc.
Go ahead.
The one that you said they put the DNA in. Some people think that that will actually change your genetic makeup, change your DNA. Is that even possible?
No, it's not even possible because the process where our DNA is, imagine our DNA is what determines who we are.
Mm-hmm.
If the body, if our maker can design us in such a way that the immune system can protect us from your hair down to your toes, imagine what it's going to do to protect our DNA. That is in our nucleus, and all that process happens in the cytoplasm, which is inside the cell, and then the virus goes out. So it doesn't even have anything to do with our DNA.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the mRNA vaccines, it pretty much sends a code to the body to fight the virus on the cellular level. Is it possible for an mRNA vaccine to instruct your body to do something that may be harmful to the immune system and therefore the body itself?
Not with the vaccines, because the sequence, all the sequences that they use in, whether it's the DNA or the RNA, mRNA, it is specifically, it makes that spike protein. That's it.
Right.
And that's why it's easy. If in the future they decide that, okay, we have a lot of variants, you can easily just take the sequence, because it's a sequence of letters. Right? It's a sequence of letters joined together that when the body reads it, it will make just the spike protein, which is not infectious and which the virus needs. It's essential for the virus to be able to infect us.
I hope that answers the question for some people, because again, some people were just skeptical and they were thinking, this virus can change my DNA and do stuff inside my body. So I'm glad you cleared that up for us, Doctor. Now, are there any circumstances under which somebody should not take a vaccine?
There are a few circumstances under which, and the CDC and World Health Organization have come up with guidance on those. If you have certain allergies, say to polysorbate or the sorbate, which is one of those preservatives that they use in the vaccines, sorry. Also, if you are severely immunosuppressed, if you have some immune system problems, you've had any allergies to those vaccines themselves or any components of those vaccines, although almost all of them are tested, but there are people that are always allergic to different things.
Right.
So those are kind of the main contraindications for taking the vaccine.
Now, Doctor, a lot of people are concerned because, the time frame that the vaccine has been developed in, they're saying it's the shortest in history. Now, I understand it's because, we have more technology now, and everybody in the world was working on this at the same time to develop the vaccine as fast as possible so that we can get out of the pandemic. But should we be concerned about long-term effects, considering that we didn't have much time to do the usual testing that is done with vaccines?
No, we've been we've been working with mRNA vaccines and working mRNA for a very long time. So when you imagine that the entire world was shut down and all scientific focus, all governmental focus is on stopping that virus. So I always give this analogy. Is if you were building a house and you had the land, you had everything, but you had all the money on earth. And you had all the best builders and all the best architects and all these experts at your disposal. How long do you think it would take them to build your house? It's the same thing with the vaccine, because the entire world was shut down and everybody had to stop. Almost all scientists had to stop what they were doing to focus on the way to get us out of this mess. Too many people were dying and too many people continue to die. So people were focused like a laser on, and the good thing about it is that the communication between scientists, whether in Germany or Italy or in Spain or in wherever, all that data, they can all look at it. We can all analyze it at the same time and criticize it and make it better. And all that was happening. The amount of data that we collected in 1 year is pretty amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm curious about a lot of things still with regards to the vaccine. I mean, not just the vaccine, but the treatment of COVID-19 itself. Because, we say that, we understand that it attaches itself to the cells in your body and it goes out and stuff like that. But is there a way, or has there been a way developed to actually treat it once you've been COVID positive, or is it just a matter of you, if you're not vaccinated, that is? If you're not vaccinated and you get COVID-19, is it treatable at all? And how do we treat it?
Yes, you can treat it. And remdesivir, like I said, is one of those. And I'll just explain how remdesivir works. So remember, the virus is a single strand mRNA virus, right? A single strand of letters. Those letters will code for all the different parts, the spike protein, the membrane protein, all those parts of the virus. Now, when it reads, if it's say, let's say it's supposed to make the spike protein, remdesivir is a drug, an antiviral they use that has a base that is changed. One letter is changed, right? So that, and the virus cannot use its repair mechanisms to repair it. So it stops the reading. It's like if somebody sent you a letter, and I slash that letter in half.
You can't read the next half.
You cannot read. You can't read what else is on it. So that is how remdesivir works. It stops the replication of the virus. So that prevents it. So even if it had already infected other cells, there's nothing you can do about the cells that are already infected. But you can protect the ones when they leave that cell and go infect other cells. You can, the remdesivir will block the replication and it won't be able to go in. So then now the antibodies and the other drug cocktails they give them will work on other parts of the virus and loosen the infection.
And the variants that we speak about, right? Is it that it's just a matter of some of the letters changing as well that makes the variant?
Yes, exactly. The changing or switching, because really it's only 4 letters.
Okay.
In certain sequences, right? It's 4 letters in a certain sequence. Yeah. T T T T T T or G G G G G G, and A, those. It's a sequence of letters. So if it will jumble up the letters, and that's what happens with the flu virus every year. Why we have to get a shot, because it switches to try to evade the vaccines. But this one is not changing, thank God, it's not changing as fast as,
the flu
or other viruses.
What causes, I mean, before we had any vaccines, we saw that there were variants, right? I'm curious as to what causes the letters to switch, what causes the variants to develop.
It is evolution on a micro scale. The virus is trying to stay alive and to beat us. And we are trying to stay ahead of it to try to prevent it from proliferating And so there is always this tug of war with the virus and or viruses trying to evolve to stay alive and to beat the treatments that we have.
So let's go back to vaccines now then. Do the vaccines that we know that we have right now, are they able to protect from all the variants, or is it that the vaccines will have to be revised in a way in which they can affect different variants?
So far, all of the variants that we have can be, the vaccines are effective against them. Some less so than others, but if we put it in context, the flu vaccine that we get every year is only 50% effective, about 50% effective, right? That's what we get every year. And we have vaccines now like Moderna, Pfizer that are 95, 96%, AstraZeneca, which is like about 72 to 80%. So even when the variants drop the effectiveness some, it's still better to have the vaccine than not.
No vaccine. Right.
Yes.
Speaking about those numbers you just mentioned about the effectiveness, or rather the efficacy of the vaccines, I read an article stating that these numbers don't really mean much for each vaccine.
All right, we seem to be having some issues there with Carrie's feed. However,
They
I
were
want
tested
to.
under different conditions. How true is that? Oh, am I back?
Yes, you're back. You're back now. But just now, before you continue, Carrie, I want to just remind people that if they have any questions, they can feel free to send the questions to us on our Facebook feed at the Now Morning Show. So check. Go ahead, Carrie. Let's see if we get
so,
there we go.
So, good. Am I back? Good,
Yes,
good.
sir.
Yeah.
So you have to repeat what you said because it got cut off.
Well,
all right.
I was asking, what was I asking? Yeah. Am I gone again?
No, you're back. You're back now.
Oh, I see. My internet connection is unstable. Okay, let me just try and make it quick then. I read in an article that the efficacy numbers, don't really mean much because the vaccines were tested under different conditions. How true is that? And is one vaccine better than the other?
To be honest, let me take the last question first. The best vaccine for me would have been the first one I was offered. The chances of COVID doing harm to me is 50-50. And any vaccine that gives me 70, 60, 80% protection, I'll take those chances better than just trying to go it alone with COVID, because once we get COVID, it's life or death. We don't know what it will do to us. That's a 50-50 flip of the coin that I wouldn't like to take. Now, the first part of your question, if you know what, could you repeat the first part?
Yeah, I was asking, I was saying that I read an article that stated that the vaccines were tested under different conditions. So these efficacy numbers that are broadcast don't really mean much. How true is that?
It is true that the efficacy numbers may not, but there's another word, effectiveness.
Right.
Efficacy is what you do in the clinical trials, but the effectiveness is what happens in the population. And we have been, those vaccines have been highly successful. I mean, look at Israel, look at the United States, the numbers are plunging of both new infections and deaths. And those are the things. And I'll just say, I just came back from Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, where I was deployed with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to help vaccinate people. In just those few weeks that we were there, the Pima County where we were had 68% of 55s and above vaccinated, and 89% of 65 and above vaccinated, the rates of infection started to fall. So we had to some of us had to go home early because the mission was successful. So as we start to vaccinate people, as we start to, we look at the effectiveness in the population, and we're seeing that they're wildly effective.
And that is very reassuring indeed. I have a bit of a devil's advocate question. Now, vaccines from the past have been always thought of to make someone immune from any particular disease, whether it be polio or whatever the case may be. Has been thought, that is what is generally thought of by the layman when it comes to vaccines. Although with the COVID-19 vaccine, it has been proven that someone can be reinfected. How can this happen?
You can. There is always nothing in science or on earth is 100%, right? If you even look at the Pfizer and Moderna, which are 95, 96 and 94%, there's still a 6% or 5% window there that you can have a breakthrough infection. However, what it's showing is that those breakthrough infections are not causing hospitalizations or death or serious illness. So again, it would be much better to take the risk with the vaccine and not get serious illness or death than to be unprotected.
But doctor, some people are still concerned about the side effects that come with the vaccines, because we've been seeing, I mean, a small percentage, but we still see side effects that happen when people take the vaccine. What do you say to that?
You know, we introducing a foreign body into your arm. We introducing a part of the virus that has caused the pandemic. So the body is naturally seeing it as foreign and will pick it up. And that the people who have the strongest side effects, believe it or not, are the ones with the strongest immune systems. The younger folks, and because their immune system is so robust, it attacks the site where the vaccine is given so it can uptake the mRNA or the DNA that's there. So you would find mild fevers, mild irritation, some swelling at the site, especially after the second shot. Me personally, I just felt real sleepy after the second one. The first and the second one, my arm was really sore, but after a day or so, it was gone. Now, we don't know why some people have very bad adverse reactions, but everybody's DNA is different. Everybody's makeup is different. Everybody's health conditions are different. So we really don't understand it. Those are things that we have to study more.
And how long do you think we'll be studying this for? Because I know that, I mean, like we say we're going to wait to see long-term effects if there are any. But how long do you think generally we're going to be still getting new information on these vaccines and this virus?
I think it's going to be a long time. We have to figure out a whole lot about this virus and how it made, from the start. You can already hear they want to know the origin of it.
Of course.
We want to know where it came from, whether it jumped from the lab or whether it came from the animals. We want to know all of those because there'll be studies on the psychological effects of COVID on society, on children's growth. How did staying home affect children? So sociologists, economists, everybody are going to be real busy in the next few years. Healthcare, the emergency supplies, all those things have to be taken into account and studied so that we know how to handle better a pandemic the next time without having to probably shut down everything.
Well, hopefully technology would be so advanced that we wouldn't have a pandemic the next time around. But let's go back to the fully vaccinated person and reinfection. Now, we've been told, even by our Ministry of Health, that if someone who is fully vaccinated happens to be reinfected, they would very likely be asymptomatic and not show any symptoms. The symptoms would be very mild. That raises a question for me in that, is that person able to spread the virus although they're asymptomatic? Because an unvaccinated asymptomatic person is, something that is very worrisome for public health. So kind of fully vaccinated asymptomatic person who has been reinfected spread the virus further.
It is very, very seldom that they can, because of how the vaccines work. The severity of COVID illness is usually determined by the viral load that you take in.
Right.
How much time exposure you've had in a big crowd, with people blowing COVID all over the place. So if your viral load is high, you can imagine it's a bunch of cells being infected at one time. And the process goes by and more, they destroy those cells, go infect others and others and others. Now, if you control it with those antibodies that are outside of the cell waiting, then there is your symptoms will be mild or asymptomatic. You might not even know you got it because all these antibodies and other parts of the immune system. It's not just the antibodies. The vaccines give you the antibodies, but the first shot, especially in the 2-shot series, it alerts the immune system to the other parts, like the Navy or the Air Force, it alerts the other parts to get ready in case it sees COVID. So it's very seldom you can pass it on to somebody, and more than likely you'll be asymptomatic.
Now, doctor, you mentioned children being affected from a learning perspective, having to stay home and all that stuff. But what about giving children the vaccine? I know that we haven't been doing that. And is there a reason, and how soon can we improve that? Because I assume that they can still get it and spread it.
Children?
Yeah.
So your question was exactly what?
Well, it's 2 parts. Can children get the virus and spread the virus? And as such, should we be getting them vaccinated as well? And how soon?
Well, they already, Pfizer and Moderna have both tested in children 12 and above. I think they are doing children 6 and above. They are testing it on them right now. We just want to make sure that there is no harm coming to those kids when we give them those vaccines. So they're doing the clinical trials on those. But they already, even before I left Arizona, we had started to give shots, especially the Pfizer, to 12 and above. Those are the main population we were seeing anyways, because they were, it had just come out that they could get it. But they're working on the other ones from 6 years old and above. To try to get them vaccinated.
And have we seen any reactions, any side effects coming out of it as yet?
Not more than we would see in the normal population. The studies are just starting to come out for those younger children. If you remember with the Johnson & Johnson, when there was this, people started to see this, those side effects, like the blood clots, they shut it down. Well, if there are guardrails all through the clinical trial process to shut down at any point if there's any harm that's coming to any of those participants.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a refreshing thing to hear, because I think a lot of people are concerned. A lot of people are concerned that, there may not have been enough stopgaps, but I think that, between the World Health Organization and the CDC and all of these bodies that are regulating it, I think that we should be all right. If they all approve the vaccines, we should be all right. Yeah.
Yes, and the thing is,
we should trust the science.
Question.
We should trust the science.
Yes, a good milepost is to find out why is it that more than 90% of us doctors already got vaccinated. We wouldn't, I wouldn't let my parents, my mom, who's 77 in St. Thomas, I wouldn't let my dad, who's about the same age, I wouldn't let them take something I know would harm them or mess with their DNA even.
Right.
But I do believe that it's the only way. COVID is it causes a lot of deception. The minute you let your guard down, it just flares up. And I don't think, especially our Caribbean islands, they're not really well equipped to handle an overload of hospitalizations. We don't have the kind of hospitalizations, hospital systems that we have like here. And even here in New York, New Jersey, it was overwhelmed. Detroit, we don't have those systems back home. So we have to do the best that we can to get vaccinated and to keep wearing the mask and social distancing, just to make sure that we can keep those numbers down as we vaccinate the population to start to open up.
Now, speaking
the
of
topic of wearing masks, I've seen reports in the US where those who are fully vaccinated can go in public without wearing masks and without having to socially distance and these things. What level of immunity, herd immunity even, do we need to get to that stage where it's safe to do so?
I don't, since the CDC came out with 2 weeks after my second shot, I was pretty confident I didn't want to wear the mask.
Right.
I knew I was protected. And then a few days, CDC came out, so I don't wear my mask because I know I'm protected. It is just to make me feel better, but now it's people's level of risk and people's level of tolerance. Remember, we've had those masks for over a year and a half, and that is kind of foreign to us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so not wearing them feels like some freedom. But we do have to be concerned that the people who are not vaccinated and will try to wear the masks, will not wear the masks, they should be really worried because, for instance, I know that I'm vaccinated so I can walk around and I doubt anything is going to happen to me. But they don't know that I'm vaccinated and they know they are not vaccinated. So they are putting themselves at major risk because there might be people like them who don't want to wear the mask and who are not vaccinated and may be carriers of that virus. That is a big risk. The onus now, the responsibility is on those who are not vaccinated to make sure that they protect themselves.
So then, Doctor, with regards to, I know, in the Caribbean, we love Carnival, right? And I see that a lot of the American parts of Miami and stuff have opened back up, and they're supposed to be having carnivals coming up and stuff like that. Would that be a big concern then? Because you're saying that if you don't have to wear the mask and non-vaccinated people can also just not wear a mask, how do we regulate that? How do we look out for that? And how do we mitigate that risk?
They say it's on a system, right? So if you are vaccinated, if you care about your community, because that is what Carnival is, right? It's community, it's people coming together,
right,
to have a good time, to enjoy. Is a spirit of togetherness. So it would be against even the meaning of Carnival for people to know that they're walking around and could be susceptible and have a dangerous disease that could kill so many people, spreading it. Mm-hmm. That's not community. That's not Carnival.
Well said, Doctor. Well said. And you know what? I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning to discuss COVID-19 vaccines and the way forward for the Caribbean. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Swinburne, Augustine, microbiologist and immunologist. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
I
hope you all get rid of this virus.
I hope so too.
Take care.
All right, guys, you're tuned into the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more. All right, stick around. We're still talking vaccines for the rest of the show. So, we're here.